So I have the privilege and the honor of coming out to Grand Forks, North Dakota, my hometown, and meeting with my brother, who is an entrepreneur, and his mentor, Penny. Who has mentored him since he was like, what, 19 or 20 years old?
18, 19, yeah.
18.
Yep.
So one of the things that I talk to people about when it comes to investing in real estate and starting a business is that you need to make sure that you're looking for somebody who's already done the things you want to do. Because if you don't find a mentor, you're going to spend a lot of time figuring things out the hard way. So what I want to talk about in this interview with you two is how you guys really met each other, why you chose to take him under his wing or under your wing. And lastly, in an environment where malls and movie theaters are failing left and right because Amazon's shutting people down, how is it that you've come to own an extremely successful movie theater, an extremely successful mall, and then you opened up your own restaurant within that mall, which also the restaurant industry fails? So we're going to talk about all these different topics. First and foremost, introduce yourself. Sam is my little brother. Give us a little intro on who you are.
My name's Sam Newton. I've been Michael's brother for 29 years. It's been a ride. It's been very fun. I've been working here at the River Cinema in East Grand Forks, Minnesota with Penny Stye for the last 10 years. I started doing maintenance. I did that for a couple years during the winter while I was also doing concrete in the summer. And the last 8 years now, I have been working behind the counter as one of Penny's managers, currently her GM.
Yep. Keep you busy doing all my technical stuff.
Yep.
So I am Penny Stye. I have been in the business of the theater business for 42 years. I work with my family. My mom and dad bought a theater when I was like 12 years old, and I've been with them ever since. And we started in Black Duck, Minnesota, and then we had a theater and a restaurant all in the same building, and we had a movie store, and then we progressed into Fosston, Minnesota, and then Crookston, Minnesota, and then into East Grand Forks, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So it's a family business. We've been doing this. I work with my brother as my business partner, and my sister ran a theater. My other brother runs a theater. So it's a family business. Mm-hmm. And all the relatives work here as well. So yours too.
Mm-hmm. Every one of them. Yeah. Well, yeah. All the younger ones.
All the younger ones.
We'll get Rachel at the Shire one of these days.
One of these days. But anyhow, the idea is just it's a family-owned business and family-run.
Yeah. It was. So, I think a lot of people in more heavily populated areas like I live in the Seattle area don't understand as much about the idea and concept of family-run businesses. We have AMC and we have Regal Cinemas. There are no independently owned and operated movie theaters with the exception of an occasional drive-in movie theater with like one screen that might be here or there. And those have been shut down left and right because it's just they can't make money on them. Right. So one of the things I want to talk about is my channel that's based mostly on real estate investing. When it comes to commercial real estate, oftentimes the value is assigned to how much money your property can bring in. And so if your movie theater is profitable, or if the leases that you have with existing tenants, if they're profitable, that drives the value of the property up. So first thing to you, owning a mall, Penny, how do you market to clients and who are you looking for to bring into your mall to keep it active?
It has changed. So we are always in the theater industry, but when East Grand Forks had this mall and it was empty, pretty much completely empty, and they asked us to come in. It was actually on a radio show, and they were asking, what are we going to do with this empty mall? And people started calling in, and they said, why don't you call Bob Moore? Ask if he'd put a theater in, and they did. And then so my dad went to lunch. He said, oh, hey, Bob, I heard you're putting a theater in East Grand Forks. And he's like, I am. And so he came over and he looked at it. And sure enough, this is this big, beautiful mall that had no clientele. The city owns the parking lot, which is, if you know in business, the parking lots are a lot to maintain, stripe, plow. City has to own it because we have a dike around it because of the flooding. So they did that. And then, he came over and looked at it. There's 9 restaurants around us, good location, good community. There's 60,000 people here, which isn't as much as like Seattle, but still a good location, right. Good price. So anyhow, we came in and we built it by hand. So
well before they purchased it.
Yeah.
They built the movie theater by hand or the interior of the mall?
The interior of the mall, I mean,
The theater,
whole place was almost completely regutted. They added a second floor for all the projectors and whatnot. So Bob had to come in and make sure that, well, first of all, that the ceilings were high enough to allow for projectors to be installed there, because there's a certain level of clearance that you have to have between the projector and customers down on the main level, and the building was just perfect to be retrofitted to put in a screen. And so they started with, it was 12 screens, but when we first opened, only 7 of them were completed.
Yep.
And it was almost an immediate success. I wasn't there at that time. It was 2008, right?
2007. December 7th of 2000. Yeah. December 7th, 2007 at 7 p.m.
And to put that
into theaters.
to put that into retrospect, 2008, so the year following, was the year that the first Iron Man movie came out, which was the first launch of this massive Marvel situation. And I wasn't here for it, but I think one of the things that made us so successful was, you were mentioning earlier, you've got AMCs, you've got Regals, you've got this, more corporate, very obvious atmosphere to a movie theater that people are used to. And so we had our Carmike here, which is now AMC, and we had a couple theaters in town. But Bob and Penny and her family came in and created, as you can see in this background, mind you, over on the theater side, we don't have the ducks and whatnot, but this log cabin theme.
Right.
Really interesting, really unique, really warm and cozy, very different movie theater theme. And it just exploded immediately overnight. It was very successful. But
we didn't actually buy them all for 7 years.
Several years, yeah.
Yeah, we actually had leased the area for the theater first and got the 12 theaters, and then it was very successful. But this mall was so renowned. The city owned it. And so they're city. They're not meant to own a business. They call the electrician to change a light bulb. It's not their fault. It's just they're not good property owners. So which
is why they sold it for less than a tenth of what it's valued at now.
Yeah.
It's true.
You can always guarantee the government is going to ruin everything. They will overpay, undersell. They're not good at managing business.
They're not good at owning a piece of property. So my dad looked at it and said, wow, you kidding me? There's 9 restaurants around here, a huge parking lot, and we have a lot of room in here. And he's like, let's do it. And so we did. And the city mayor, he was like, well, what's going to be your biggest problem with coming into here? And he said, parking. They're like looking at it, it's a huge parking lot. And they're like, we don't have enough parking. And he was right. We ran out of parking.
People would fill up it's a huge parking lot all around, and especially in the back, and every single weekend that would fill up. And then Cabela's would fill up, and Cabela's has a huge parking lot as well. That would fill up all the side streets for years.
And more restaurants came in because it's dinner and a movie.
And
a movie. So
massively successful immediately.
So if we look at the time frame, so 2007, you guys are moving in here. You have the idea. You have the bigger picture. Even though Amazon existed, nobody at that point yet anticipated it was going to be putting malls out of business.
Blockbuster Video.
Yeah, that's right. Blockbuster Video was still red boxes
I used to
were
go
popular.
Rent and everything. At that time, it was a different industry.
And so my question is, over the last several years, everybody knows malls are dying left and right. Where I'm from in the Seattle area, you walk into a mall, half of the stores are empty. There's almost nobody in it. When I was a kid, malls had tons of people in them. So you've had to figure out how to stay popular and relevant and bring people in through a time where most businesses using the same model are failing. So how exactly are you doing that?
That is exciting. I get so excited talking about that. What I did is I looked at what the successful stores were doing. If you look at a Walmart or a Target or some of these big stores, what do? They bring in a photographer. They bring in a hairstylist. They bring in a bank.
A tattoo artist.
Not a JCPenney, but...
Or to Walmart, head back by the toiletries. They've got their tattoo artists back there just... I can fit you in at 6.
Exactly. But what we have is... when I looked at them, they all had food, they had services, and then they had retail. And so I started implementing this years ago. We brought them down. They're all owner-operated businesses. And what we brought in is we're the entertainment. And so this mall is successful because we have entertainment, which is the theater. We have a 15-screen theater. When we're really busy, before COVID, we were running anywhere from 380 to 480,000 people through a year.
Wow.
A year. So you're running 10,000 people through a week.
Wow.
That generates a lot of traffic. So with that traffic, you need to, you have these stores around you, right? Retail isn't going to do that well. Some retail works really good in a mall, but the best thing is to add services as well. So, and food. So services, retail, and food. And I also added a bank. So a bank is a staple. They're a solid figure that stays for a long time. We have multiple retail stores, but they're like boutiques. Hollywood Heroes is like a comic book store.
Mhm.
And then we have services. These are things you can't buy on Amazon. Services, people have to come in and make an appointment. They have to come to a massage therapy. They have to come to a tattoo artist. They have to come in. We have yoga. We have hot yoga, regular yoga. These are things that people come in. So you have the theater bringing in people for entertainment. We have a restaurant in there as well. That food is a big staple, and then you have services, and you have your regular retail stores. And when you put them together, then they work really well.
So let me ask a couple follow-up questions. So what I'm really hearing is some of the reasons some of these other malls might have been failing is they were too heavily invested in one type of category.
Yes.
And they weren't diversified enough to bring traffic coming to the mall. So one of the things that you did was to diversify into a whole bunch of different business models to bring more clientele walking through the building. Very smart. Can I ask you a follow-up? You don't have to get into super specifics, but how do you manage your leases and what's the relationship like with those tenants? Do you hunt for them or are they coming to you?
Yeah, well, I hunted down my tattoo artist, that's for sure.
Yeah.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
A little bit of both. So, we'll post openings on Facebook and Craigslist, and we'll have some people that'll reach out to us that'll be interested. But we'll also find things in people that we want. For instance, the tattoo artist. Penny's wanted a tattoo artist in here forever, and we finally got one.
But they were told, I'm looking for one.
Yep.
They're like, are you sure? They're not really, they usually are a little afraid to have a tattoo artist. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're exactly what I'm looking for.
Right.
And most of the people on the Grand Forks side, most of the tattoo artists are on the Grand Forks side. So if they wanted to come over here, they had to get licensed over here, and that's its own process. We have to deal with things like zoning. But I think a big thing that Penny does is she makes it affordable. I mean, some of these. So the Columbia Mall here in Grand Forks is like every other mall in town. It's completely dead. One of the only things that's still standing there is the little pretzel shop. They're right in the center. Do you know what they're paying rent there to be right there in the center? $5,000 a month.
What?
We average
in a dead mall?
We average about $12 a square foot, which is cheap.
And we're full.
Right.
Even during COVID, we're full.
And
we're
the mall,
always full.
And the mall we're always full. And the mall and all of its tenants pays off all of the payments towards the mall.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than enough to cover all that. I personally think we should raise it and that we could. And she says, no, we're full. And I say, Penny, please raise it a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But people stay here forever. And she also is extremely generous. When COVID hit, she offered, I believe, everybody in the mall several months. She didn't charge them at all. She didn't charge them at all. And so people who were looking at losing their businesses and having to close down because they couldn't be open were allowed to maintain their business because for months she didn't charge them and she ate the bill herself, which is not something that a lot of business people would do. It was something that even I was like, hey, maybe you could give them a discount. Right. You out of your mind? But it worked. There's tremendous loyalty to
and it's
to
personal
her with everyone that she works
when
with.
When they
It's
have a problem, I answer the phone.
Yep.
It's not, I don't delegate this to somebody else. I answer the phone. If there's a flooding issue or they had grasshoppers, we have grasshopper year. I don't know. They're like, we have grasshoppers.
When the locusts come.
And I was like, so it's like, it's like I take care of it and I take care of it immediately. I answer them. I hear what they have to say and it's important. Being personal is important.
Right. So one of the things that so I'm a landlord, and one of the things that I talk to people about all the time is you do have to have a good relationship with your tenants. You need to fix their problems. You need to care about what's important to them. And just from the aspect of you can be criminally sued for so many different things if you don't act quick enough. And then, of course, if there's any type of frustration or lack of action on your part, well, then usually it's just going to double down. They're going to try to move out, or they're going to cause problems, or they're going to break stuff, or they're not going to pay. And so if you want that steady flow of income, you need to give them the best experience that you possibly can, which is what it sounds like you guys are doing in here. And so very interesting that you would have given the free rent. And there's probably a lot of people who hear that and cringe at that, much like Sam does. much like I do. But in the Seattle area where I'm from, I watched multiple businesses that had been in the place go out of business. And I remember thinking to myself, I'll use an example, the soccer arena. They didn't own the building. They rented this building for 19 years. They paid the rent. And it was like $10,000 a month for 19 years. COVID happens. And all of a sudden, they're not allowed to have people come play indoor soccer there anymore. So for the next 6 months, they have no income. So they had to pay rent for 6 months with no income. They went out of business. 19 years, they go out of business. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself about the people who are renting to them. Why would you let them go out of business? No one else is going to move in here. You're not going to get paid anyways. Like, I mean, if they've been a good tenant, been 19 years, why would you not try to do something to work with them? So how do you strike that balance between being too generous to your own detriment? But like
she doesn't.
She just gives it all away.
There is no balance.
My brother does. I am in business with my brother, and he's a little bit. He does keep me in rein. But,
okay.
If like the tattoo artist we just had in, he couldn't. He had everything in and done, and then the planning and zoning took like another 60 days. So I dropped his rent down to like $150 a month. It's like, I'd rather keep him. He's a long-term renter. And I can tell you a lot of times when our renters leave, they usually find someone to rent for them. A lot of times they will refer someone or say, hey, this one's opening up. Do you want it? We're always full. And so, but it's word of mouth too. If you have a good reputation, and I'll tell them, hey, we're always full. So if anything happens and if you need to leave, just let me know. I'll let you out of your lease. I just need to find someone to rent first, but just give me a minute. I'll find somebody.
They fill up as quick as people leave. I mean, like that.
And so, but word of mouth, references.
And also we're one of, if not the highest foot traffic location in Grand Forks. I mean, the mall's a joke. You can go to the mall right now on a Saturday. It's completely dead. Nobody gets the foot traffic like we do, especially on weekends, Thursdays, or when movies first come out. But Friday, Saturday, Sunday hits around, and we have 200, 300, 400 people in the lobby. There's no comparison anywhere in town. There's no restaurant. There's no mall. There's no nothing like that. And so that's a huge benefit for people such as the tattoo artist. People. There's a massive benefit to businesses if they can get foot traffic. But that's impossible these days.
Right.
And because of the theater, we're still able to provide that for the tenants in the stores that we have is huge foot traffic. And so that's a massive benefit to them. So you add that and then significantly cheaper rent to anywhere else they're going. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's a given. And then working obviously with somebody like Penny, who's wildly generous and kind, it's very easy to fill the place and build that loyalty and respect. We've had very, very few issues with tenants ever. The last one we did was, well, I won't drop any names, but we had a gentleman who was staying here who, was going to make a website for us and robbed us, $2,500, and then kept our website name, never paid us, and then stayed here in the building with his business that he was running for an additional 2 years. So we got to see his miserable little mug every day we walked by.
It didn't bother me, but it drove you crazy.
Was he paying rent? Is that why he was staying here?
Yeah, because he ran a separate business.
Okay.
But he offered to build a website for us. So he took the money to build the website and never delivered it to us. And then tried to resell our website domain that we asked for $20,000.
What?
Tried to sell it. Yeah, real dirtbag kind of guy. So
no good deed goes
it's
unpunished.
okay. He's not going to see it.
But I'll send it to him.
I never want to say anything bad about anybody.
Yeah, and that has its massive ups and benefits and whatnot, but it also very occasionally has its negative. Most people around here are people of integrity, but if we bump into somebody who's a little viper in the grass, they'll get what they want.
So on the topic of bad tenants, so this guy, he was actually not a bad tenant. He just was a bad business partner when it came to building a website.
He was a bad tenant.
But so perfect. My next question is, I want the definition of what makes a bad tenant beyond just not paying rent, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then when you have a bad tenant, as a landlord, you evict somebody. Do you guys do eviction? So define bad tenant, explain how you get rid of them.
I'm going to let you do that.
I've actually never had evict anyone. I never have. I just work with them. It could happen, and then I will send this guy because I don't like being mean, but I just don't. But to me, a good tenant is they also work together. they communicate with the other tenants. They talk to each other. They work together. And even when I brought in, I have 2 different massage therapies in here. Before I brought in the second one, I talked to the first one and said, is it okay if I let them come in? Are you okay with that? And they're like, oh yeah, the more here, the better for us. We get known as a location to come for massage therapy. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way I kind of look at it. But I'm respectful of them. I don't just bring somebody in. Now the tattoo artist, he's like, oh, we're very territorial. So, okay, we only want one in the mall. I'm like, okay, so I won't look for anyone else. That's fine. We'll look for a chiropractor. He's like, good choice.
Smart.
But anyhow, there are good and bad tenants, but I do take time to get to know them personally. I'm a very personal person. I talk to them, I get to know them, and then I ask a few people around, do you know this person or whatever? And they usually, I guess we live in a smaller community, so it is more personal, so I can ask around a little bit and people will tell me. Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of the advantage of living in a town of 60,000. It's a little bit smaller, but I understand what you're saying, but it'd be a lot harder in your area. Yeah. A lot harder.
So if you've never gone through an eviction, Sam, I'll leave it to you. What do you do? How do you define problem tenants and how do you handle them?
So problem tenant is somebody who's hard to communicate with or almost impossible to communicate with. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's combative, somebody who does not care for the property. In this example, this person was not only became impossible to contact and reach out to, but had put in a lot into his unit that was just destructive to the property, destructive to the walls, to the floors. There was watermarks, water stains all over by the time he had left. There was damaged trimming. There was, by the time he had left, the place looked terrible. Now, it was completely redone and fixed up by the person who moved in next. But he was combative. He was rude. He stole from us. And I know this is very niche and not something, the theft is very niche. But he was very difficult to contact during COVID. He had to, well, I don't want to get too detailed with some of the stuff, but he was very difficult to communicate with. He was very combative. He was very rude. He was very ungrateful, and he was another one of the people who was given months of free rent and was still extremely disrespectful, rude, and ungrateful, and damaged the property. I think that makes a very poor tenant. Now, what condones evicting somebody? Lack of payment and damage to property. Yeah, if you're unable to make your payments, you're unable to be contacted via email, phone calls, and some of the renovations or work or cosmetics you're adding to the unit or whatever place you're staying at,
uninsured,
causing
or
damage, things like that. That would certainly, condone evicting them.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, I mean, an eviction is never fun in any part of real estate. What's the struggle on the residential side is there's a lot of laws in terms of the time that it takes because these are people's houses. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine it's maybe a little bit more streamlined from a business aspect, but it's still never fun. It's costly. They could damage things on the way out. It wraps up your time and wastes it. And so it's just a frustrating thing to go through. So to hear that you guys have had this thing open since 2007 and have never actually officially evicted anyone.
I have
knock on wood.
I have officially evicted somebody from my trailer when I was renting.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. But that wasn't this mall.
No,
that was
wasn't
a personal
the mall.
eviction.
But that was a personal. But yes, I was renting out my room, and I had a guy who just was a slob, and there was just piles of trash and alcohol bottles in his room. The floor was being badly damaged by broken glass. You would open it up, and it looked like a dump in there.
Nice.
And so he just damaged the floors, the doors. Garbage juice was sinking into the flooring and whatnot. And I had to go through that process of going to the sheriff's department and getting an official eviction notice and posting that on the front door of the home and his front door. And right. So I went through that process, but that again was damage and lack of payment.
He's the muscle.
Yeah.
I just yeah.
You smile.
I smile.
Make everything feel better.
I sometimes I have to let people go and they're like, I'm so sorry. They actually usually apologize to me because it's like I'm more positive and kind and nice, and if something bad happens, I'm just like,